And we are recording yet again with the one and only Dr. Ken Alibek, the genius, handsome doctor from the former Soviet Union, now doing autism research, who's been on here, I don't know, 10, 11 times before. And you're doing some beautiful research with autism. Your youngest daughter has autism, and we've done, I want to say, 8 other episodes where we have some of your patients on from Eastern Europe, and they're beautiful episodes. They come on and you can see throughout the progression months apart as they start to incorporate your techniques and I guess changes in diet and behavior, and you can see, well, go watch the videos. You can see them talking how their children are unrecognizable. But with that, Dr. Alibek, could we maybe start with where you are now in your research? And for all the listeners, could you, because I actually don't know off the top of my head, could you define autism?
Autism, Tom, I'm sorry. First of all, of course, thank you very much for your time.
Of course.
Thank you very much
Absolutely.
for your interest in knowing autism and maybe kind of delivery this information to other people who are interested in autism.
Yes, sir.
Why it's important? The latest information about autism actually is saying, I mean, just many publications, that the number of kids having autism in the States and in the world is growing dramatically. Just recent publication about research done by CDC says nowadays we have 1 of 44 children having autism.
144?
Yeah, 1 in 44. And even you can imagine about 15, 20 years ago, this number was 1 in 110 or so. And just this number is growing quite dramatically. And autism, it's always important just to discuss how it's defined. Autism defined by some medical institutions, what kind of official definition we have on autism, about autism, and what we see actually as a disease in children. First, officially, autism is a neuropsychological or neuropsychiatric disorder, which influences behavior, ability of speaking, and inability to have normal social interaction. And officially, it's considered incurable. And the major factors nowadays are considered genetic changes and some environmental factors. But there is no clear definition what kind of environmental factors are playing a role in autism. This is what we have at this point. It's important to know that it was actually discovered and classified more than 8 years ago. Since then, we had so many discoveries made in medicine in general and in autism in particular, but they didn't play any significant role in autism treatment. That's what we have at this point of time.
What is the current form of treatment? Like if I'm 32, I don't have kids, nor am I married. But if I had a kid and the child had autism, what is the current what do you do? How does it get diagnosed? How do you go about treating it? Is there such thing as treatment? Is it just management? Do you just learn how to live with it? What is the 101?
When of course, in the field of medicine, we divide all possible treatments in 2 categories. First is just treatment itself or management of symptoms, and a cure. But we know that there is no cure at this point of time, and that's why we can discuss just treatment. And treatment has possible treatment approaches have two different directions. First, it's so-called behavioral treatment, including several things like language therapies, then ABA therapy, then some other methods of treatment, occupational therapy. But when and another part of treatment is a more, I would say, not autism treatment. It's more than kind of treatment of comorbidities, like because many kids they have a big number of we call them comorbidities, like epilepsy, seizures. We have some symptoms of bipolar syndrome, then ADHD, and some problems with gastrointestinal tract, sleeping disorders, and many other things. And just all the possible treatments. When we talk about medication, they are focused on comorbidities, but there is no actual treatment which can be considered a cure. That's what we have at this time.
So there's no actual, you just get it, and it's kind of, that's it.
Yeah, that's what we have. Tommy, when it's interesting from this point. For any other disease, we actually know many things about possible root cause, possible mechanism of disease development, and clinical manifestations. For autism, we have a completely different situation. Specifically, just in the field of medicine, we actually divide all possible descriptions of any disease into three categories. First category, we call it clinical manifestations. And based on this, we have a method of treatment, which we call symptomatic treatment. We treat symptoms. These treatments are not curative. I mean, we are not planning to cure a disease. What we do, we just ease symptoms. A set of symptoms, or just with some attempts to ease them. This is what we do at this point of time. But there is another kind of definition of disease, which we call etiology. Etiology actually is the root cause. We need to understand what is underneath. I mean, what kind of cause could be, or causes could lead to autism development. And we don't use at this point, and even just regardless of big number of publications already made, we don't use anything which actually has been already published about the possible, not possible, actually different root cause. It's already pretty well known. And another way of understanding or defining disease, we call this study of pathogenesis. Pathogenesis actually is, I would say, implies to the mechanism of disease development. Because when we have a disease, we need to understand how it starts, how it develops, what kind of organs, systems are involved in disease development, and based on this, we apply one another method of treatment, specifically focusing on the particular mechanism. In the case of autism, we don't use any etiological, or we call it ethiotropic treatment, and we don't use any pathogenetic treatment. Everything we do at this point of time, we are focusing just on symptoms and try to ease symptoms of in autistic kids.
Could you define those three words? Etiology, was it entheology, and
pathogenesis,
pathogenesis?
Yeah, and clinical manifestations or clinical picture.
Okay.
Clinical symptoms, you can say. Etiology is a root cause. Just any disease has a beginning. Any disease actually is having a trigger. For example, if we talk about some, actually this term etiology came from the field of infectious diseases. And just when we say that etiology is equal to root cause, it looks like it's quite clear to understand. And in this case, what we have, even just at some point, I saw some definition coming from the National Institute of Health, which actually say autism is a disease with the etiology, I would say, kind of genetic etiology, meaning that etiological factors which actually start the disease, trigger autism, is our genes. It's a big mistake. Genes cannot be triggers; they're targets, because they cannot change in small children by themselves. It's just because if, for example, we need to define how to understand the trigger of disease, we need to see for some environmental factors. And the great majority of publications at this point of time, they are focusing on infectious agents. And if we talk about autism and analyze publications, and publications are coming from many different places in the world, from European countries, from American publications, publications from some developed Asian countries. And we see more and more information about some infectious agents capable of causing, being considered or should be considered as etiological agents. Specifically, and physicians would understand what I'm talking about. There is a term torch. Torch, just we know what torch is. It's in English language, but actually, this definition actually is because it's an abbreviation. T stands for toxoplasmosis. It's a type of parasitic disease. Post stands for others, and I will explain what it is. R stands for rubella. C stands for cytomegalovirus, and H stands for herpes simplex. Meaning, because why we call them torch? Actually, this abbreviation was given by some scientists, I would say about 50 years ago. And it was at that time we knew that these infections, they are really important as congenital infections. I mean, the infections which could be transmitted from pregnant mother to a child through different mechanisms, directly from placenta. If a mother is infected, then either a child can be affected when in the process of delivery, or in some cases, these children can be infected when they're breastfed. And this is pretty well known. And for example, if you go to CDC website, we would see that, for example, some explanation that cytomegalovirus or some other pathogens from a group of torch can cause neurological problems in children. Even at some point, I saw that rubella and cytomegalovirus can be considered the viruses playing a role in autism development and playing a role in cerebral palsy development. This is what actually is pretty well known. It's not something, for example, we discover and we say, okay, guys, it's our discovery. No, it's already known. But when we talk about torch, others, I mean, this letter coming from others will stand for a number of other diseases, infectious diseases. Specifically, it could be chlamydia, it could be parvovirus, some viral pathogens, some bacterial pathogens, and the number actually is increasing quite dramatically. It's some of them are from herpes group, some of them from some other viral and bacterial infections. This actually is pretty well known. But it's interesting from this point. It's interesting for researchers, for physicians who are doing some research. But logically, if it's known, why wouldn't we test our children immediately after they're born for understanding whether they're infected or not? Okay. Another question: why wouldn't we test would-be mothers for these conditions? Because it's absolutely logical. If we want to prevent this tragic development, of course, we need to do this. And this is one of the things which is pretty well known, pretty well described, published, and just recently we sent a publication, just it was accepted, and hopefully it will appear quite soon. And we describe how it takes place. But I would say, okay, I did something like this. No, it's not true. What I've done, let me say, just I collected all the information. I tested for the presence of these pathogens and antibodies to these pathogens in the children having autism. And it's in 100% cases we see these infections. But what is more dramatic, the information about the role of maternal infection and future autism development is pretty well explained and described. I don't remember whether I told you or not, one of the most striking publications was published in 2019 after some retrospective analysis of mothers and kids having autism. And it was done by a big Swedish group. They analyzed 108 million pregnancies and using some medical histories of mothers who were hospitalized. And it was perfectly shown that all mothers who were hospitalized and had some infection, mostly viral infections, in the first trimester. There was another publication stating about bacterial infections. It was another study, a Danish study. They proved it was statistically a significant study, saying, okay, if a mother had a maternal infection, a probability of having a child who would eventually develop autism is very, very high. This is first. And this information is pretty well known. And just as if we go deeper, we see some other publications. We see some publications in the United States. And this is actually, it's really striking because just whatever you say, there is no way to reject this type of studies because the number of cases studied because you cannot study it, let me say, upfront, like a prospective study. But some retrospective studies with millions of children involved, they show a direct correlation between maternal infections and the infection, and autism in the children risk of autism was much, much higher. And we will see that many of these children will develop autism. This is first. This is kind of explanation of etiology. It means in our particular case, autism, etiology would be an infectious agent. Some people say, okay, whether, because what's the difference between, because there's some other publication about inflammation. Inflammation is a condition, so-called low-grade inflammation, which actually is it's a state when our bodies, instead of having normal immune response, is producing kind of low-grade response, producing low-grade inflammation. It's something like we have, maybe it would be easier to understand. When we talk about COVID-19, why people having cardiovascular diseases, why people having cancers, diabetes, some other chronic conditions, they were dying in a bigger number compared to younger people. And the only thing which could be considered absolutely statistically, I would say, proven is the presence of chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is a player because the immune system of an infected person is already producing some low levels of cytokines, and when such a person is infected, the production of cytokines is getting up dramatically, and these people will develop a cytokine storm, some respiratory distress. Let me say, you will have a chance to die. In bigger numbers. This is actually, it's not the direct, comparison, but just in order to understand what it means. And so-called chronic inflammation, which is being developed by mothers while they're getting infected, would be mothers. They live in a state of inflammation. They deliver children having low-grade inflammation, and the children having low-grade inflammation and infected either prenatally or immediately postnatally with some other infectious agents, they are acquiring the two most important things: infection, which is in a chronic state, and even though we say chronic state, I would say latent or reactivatable infections, and we have inflammation in these children. That's why initially, when, let me say, just everything is beginning, we don't see many signs. While these kids are growing, we see and that's what already a pathogenesis, because inflammation, infection, they start attacking different organs, different systems, including brain, including the immune system, including the endocrine system, and that's why we wouldn't see many things initially, but as child is being developed, we start seeing more and more, because the child is getting, let me say, already kind of captured by all these factors which are causing damage to all the brain, all the organs, including the brain, including the immune system, including the endocrine system. That's what we see. That's what kind of a difference between, but it's much more complex, of course. Just if you ask maybe in a greater detail, definitely I will explain to you other things.
A question about its cause and it being, is there, I'm not sure if I'm using the correct terminology, could it be said that there is an epigenetic impact if just, however many years ago it was 1 in 110 and it's already down to 1 in 140, or sorry, 1 in 45 or 1 in 44? That's increasing far faster than any normal sort of like natural selection type of, a giraffe slowly getting a longer neck over millions of years. That's a pretty wild increase in frequency, which I don't really see why it would be selected for. So it seems like there has to be some sort of environmental factor to it. It just, nothing else really makes sense. How could it increase? 1 in 110 to 1 in 44, that's over double. In how many years did you say that was? What was that change?
No, but I would say even more. In 1975, The ratio was 1 to 2,500.
Okay, so that even more so is
Yeah,
we're looking at frequency changes that you
yeah,
see with like technology. You know, how many people were using a touch screen 10 years ago versus now. With evolution, it is on a geologic time scale, right? It's the evolution of the opposable thumb. It's blue irises. It's we're looking at things that happen over glacial periods. This is 1 in 2,500 to 1 in 44. That's what, 52 years?
yeah.
Unless we're just witnessing some explosive growth of I guess, an allele or something that's seemingly becoming dominant, but that doesn't really, I feel like that doesn't really fit the puzzle piece.
You know, Tommy, I thought about whether I should tell about what I found, and I wouldn't even say that I'm 100% sure. But it seems to me we need to start this discussion at some point, and someone needs to uh, start talking about this for the first time. And the question is this: I mean, why we see such a dramatic increase in race? I mean, this increase in autism. When Leo Kanner in the 40s, in 1940s, discovered autism, he found just 11 children having symptoms, and it was the first description and classification. You can imagine 1940s. I mean, just actually, it was considered kind of orphan, very rare disease. Something happens at the end of 60s, and even by 1975, we have already a big number because one into 2,500, it's already a significant number. It's still rare, but significant. At some point, I started thinking, okay, what did we have at the time? I started looking through some statistical information, and what I noticed, sometime in the 70s, we started seeing some dramatic increase in sexually transmitted diseases.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we started seeing like cytomegalovirus infection or herpes simplex or Epstein-Barr. We didn't hear anything about Helicobacter at that time. I mean, it was a kind of time when we mostly thought about acute infections.
Yeah.
And there was a kind of understanding that the infectious disease field actually is coming to the end. There was even somebody, it looks like it was an attorney, a surgeon general in the later 60s or beginning of 70s. He said, okay, we're closing the book of infectious diseases. I think because future diseases wouldn't be infectious. And that's why, I mean, when I started analyzing this, what came to my attention? It's a little bit what I'm a little bit nervous now to tell about this.
You can say whatever you want.
Just have you heard the term the pill? The pill. The pill.
Oh, the pill.
Yeah, the
Well,
pill. That's
that's
what I'm saying, the pill.
that's what I was thinking when you were saying 1975. I was thinking like what led up to that, and I was racking through my mind. I was gonna say radiation from nuclear bombings, but that's 30 years prior. I was gonna say Agent Orange, 10 years, but that's 65 to 75 in Vietnam. I was thinking what other two big ones. I was gonna say birth control or thalidomide.
Birth control.
Those all happened right around there.
Birth control. You know why birth control? Because first pills, these pills discovered and approved were very
Anti-Vietnam protests.
heavy, very heavy in terms of the effect. I mean, causing inflammation because they contained two components: estrogen and synthetic progesterone or progesterone.
Progesterone,
Progesterone, yeah,
pregnenolone. Is one of them
yeah, and
pregnenolone?
yeah, and they are so dramatically pro-inflammatory. And in this case, actually, what we saw in this case, it looks like two different things came together. First, no worry about possible pregnancy because it was a kind of contraception which wouldn't give, I mean, or reduce possibility of getting pregnant. And another thing, but just if there was no threat, people started using more, I would say, less physical protection. And this is the time, for example, when we start seeing, if we take a look at how sexually transmitted disease started increasing in the 70s, you would see, let me say, how chlamydia is getting up, how Epstein-Barr is getting up, how cytomegalo,
Herpes, syphilis.
herpes, they are going together. As soon as you apply the figures of autism race, exactly same pattern.
It's the same. So it follows it like the same linear.
Yes.
That's because you do kind of see, not only do you see the pill in the 60s and 70s, but that's also kind of the onset of the free love, hippie, Woodstock. You see just the kind of the social conventions of multiple partners or premarital sex kind of breaking from that, 1940s greatest generation era to more of the hippie free love era. And then this is all preceding the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and early 90s.
I would say this. Of course, it's. I didn't want to have you. I'm not playing any political games. I'm saying.
No, sure. We're
we're talking about health.
We're brainstorming. Yeah.
Yeah, and then at this point, I can say I see no other reason.
Yeah.
Just for autism to increase. Because it's a matter. I mean, it's exactly. Let me say, coincides with the race of chronic mainly sexually transmitted diseases and autism rates. We're not talking about the current generation. We're talking about the generation of baby boomers. And actually, because they play or played, let me say, a big role in establishing this pattern. Later on, we started seeing a kind of better birth control pills, but when you have already, if at that time we had 10 or 5% infection with these pathogens like herpes, like cytomegalovirus, some other pathogens, nowadays we see from 70 to 90% infection.
Yeah.
What should I expect? What should I expect from this? And in this case, because these pills are vigorously promoted, and I saw even some statistics of this pill usage. I mean, and even younger girls, they start using these contraceptives. I mean, early on in their lives. And in this case, you can imagine. And then I went to some other publications, just trying to understand what kind of damage birth control pills can cause to younger population. I'm not in a position to say, okay, they're all bad. No,
yeah.
not, of course not. But a big number of especially psychiatric journals, and scientists who analyzed the possible effects of these pills on the body of younger girls. They see that inflammation is increasing, and for example, teenagers who have taken these pills, they have a much higher level of inflammation compared to those who didn't take them. In this case, it's a kind of things to explain because people are always asking what happened, why it happened. And I analyzed the possibility of taking some illegal drugs, having alcohol, smoking, some other things, and there is no correlation.
And
So
those,
the only correlation is coming from with birth control pills.
well, alcohol and tobacco, those are also aren't new variables. We've been, I mean,
Yeah, because in this case, if there were alcohols and tobacco, we would have more autistic kids, let me say.
Yeah, I mean, think of like the Wild West, like California. Every cowboy is smoking and drinking, and all the way before that. I mean, Revolutionary War, it's pipes, and all the way back to pre-colony Europe. So that's not new.
But you know, what could be funny? Of course, I'm not pretending to say this, but we cannot. If we want to, for example, to create a kind of crazy idea, we can say, okay, guys, autism is growing because we stopped smoking.
I mean,
Yeah, we reduce the number of smokers. And
I mean, you look at Italy and France, and they eat a ton of carbs, they smoke cigarettes, and they all drink wine, and they live longer than us. You might not be that wrong. I mean, there is something to be said for that sedentary lifestyle. They seem to live longer than us, and I'm not the first to bring that up before, where it's saying like smoking and drinking might not be that bad.
you know, of course, I know this. It's if we say this, we're not in the mainstream.
Yeah.
But when I visited Japan, you can imagine it's I would say at least half people I saw on streets, let me say, they're smokers.
Smoking and drinking, and they live to their like 90.
They have the longest life
Yeah.
expectancy in the world.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. My grandmother had a beer every day and she died at 86. She was fine. I was gonna say the only other thing I could think of though, aside from birth control is, and I'm not as certain about this, but that's also in terms of like new variable, like alcohol, tobacco, those aren't new variables. Those been around thousands of years. Um, uh, Psychiatric medication, SSRIs, maybe antipsychotics. And I'm not as certain about this, but weren't those kind of around 50s, 60s?
We analyze, I mean, different psychiatric medications, and you know, it's interesting from this point. They are not causing autism directly.
Okay.
Many medications, this is actually a little bit, it looks horrible to me. Many of them are quite pro-inflammatory. And for example, we use Depakin for reducing epilepsy.
Mm-hmm.
Depakin, Depakote.
Depakote, and yeah, Depakote's for manic episodes.
Yeah, but Depakote is really inflammatory. And in the field, can you imagine this? In the field of science, we use valproic acid or Depakote for inducing autistic-like syndromes.
Yeah.
In experimental animals.
Wow.
Because this is the only compound which can cause, I mean, a disruption of social interaction is with children. I mean, with young experimental animals. They start behaving, let me say, as artistic. I mean, they stop social interaction. They are on their own. Let me say, they start getting a kind of strange behavior, and it's a result of Depakote. And this is from this point, yes, it could be another, but what's important in this case, Tommy, just maybe the broadcast or the code, they shouldn't be considered like direct causes of autism. They should be kind of compounds playing, I mean, a paving ground for a new inflammation coming, for infection coming, let me say, and playing a role in establishing autism. I
Okay.
mean, in the parents, for example, if they take valproic acid and they used, for example, not necessarily just some of them use, some of them not, but especially when we have somebody taking this, then somebody using birth control pills, of course, already creating kind of a ground, kind of paving, let me say, line for infection, because having some low level inflammation, the people having inflammation, they get infected much faster. And this is like with COVID-19. Okay, somebody who's having inflammation, somebody who's having all these problems, let me say, they get infected easily, and they have much stronger immune responses, negative immune responses to themselves. This is what we need to keep in mind, because people are arguing whether it's some psychotropics or infection. In my opinion, it's a big mistake when we argue, saying, okay, just it should be either this or that. No, they're working together. They're working together. And one more thing that I'd like to maybe mention, because there is a good study which actually shows a kind of dependence between the age of would-be parents, parents who are in late 30s, or I would say, because you can imagine, if before the time of age of marriage was about 25, or before 25, now this is some kind of average is already 30. I mean, what it means in this case? Yes, of course, without blaming anybody. Okay, if you're 20 years old, of course, you definitely had already a bigger number of partners, right? It's logical, because nobody to blame. Second, if a lady is 30 years old, let me say, having partners and so on and so forth, of course she wants to be protected. Okay, and because the market, let me say, is offering a huge variety of different birth control pills. The second factor. The third factor, I would say, by this age, like many people nowadays, they have chronic diseases. We start developing diabetes. Many of them are becoming obese. Many of us. Some have hypothyroidism, Hashimoto, and all many other things. And let me say, something extra, like a kind of cherry piece of
Cherry on top.
on the cake, we have infections.
Yeah.
Infections, I mean, this is a result of all the things. That's what we have. And in this case, I already noticed when I talk to parents, many of them are quite, I would say aged, but they're not young, let me say, per se, saying, okay, they're not 18, 20 years olds. They're already in their late 30s or late 20s. Its range is, and it means, for example, having some chronic conditions. I mean, not necessarily diseases, but some disorders. Having some, not all of them, but some of them having some birth control pills. Then getting infections, and many of them are having chronic. You can imagine it's. I see herpes simplex, I see cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr, I've seen mycoplasma, I've seen many things, and it would be really unusual if mothers during pregnancy wouldn't transfer inflammation and infection to their newborns. That's the case.
So two things I was just kind of thinking about in the back of my mind is one, if the pill, if contraception could lead to autism, we wouldn't even actually know what the full picture is, because that's also that whole era of, well, one, the kind of the free love, the hippie movement, really kind of the introduction of, I guess, another wave of feminism. You have multiple variables, right? Free love, the spread of the STDs, the multiple partners, and then the pill. It's also, that's kind of where the social window is shifted towards women's choice for abortion. So I wonder how many, it would follow along logic, right? That the woman or women using the pill would also probably be most likely to have had an abortion. And this is just my logic. This is just my observation. I'm not trying to be some.
Tommy, I would suggest a different approach.
Okay.
A woman. First of all, of course, we're not sexist, correct?
No. The point.
We cannot say, okay, everything is because of our women. No, it's not the case.
Sure. No, yeah, no.
We're kind of equal situation between males and females.
Yeah.
No question about this. But at this point, I would focus more on pharma companies producing this type of birth control pills, not because we need to prohibit them. We need to use because there are some less damaging birth control pills. They're more expensive, obviously, but they're not causing such a traumatic damage to the immune system and wouldn't cause inflammation. And another thing I would suggest in this case, a simple test for inflammation presence, or autoimmunity presence, for the presence of some infections before a couple plans, let me say, to have a child, a simple treatment without having any kind of expensive drugs would reduce the risk of autism, not just dramatically. It could make it, let me say, minuscule or non-existent.
Yeah.
But it's a part of problem. And even just in some cases, okay, we didn't do this before the woman got pregnant, but we still have the time of pregnancy. And we still can take samples, we can still analyze for infections. And even within the time of pregnancy, we have some medications which are permissible for using in pregnant women.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, even just because at the time of brain formation, some organ formations, just some diagnosis of these conditions and treatment of these conditions would definitely reduce the risk of autistic child appearance, let me say, many folds. And in this case, such a decision would change the entire pattern of the situation.
The the only point I was trying to make, no, it's by no means is it a criticism or a sexist statement, or go do whatever you want. You want to use birth control, more power to you. Just from an observation, if we're looking at a correlation to the kind of the growth of contraception use and autism cases, I was gonna say is then we'd also be missing a lot of data because of the number of abortions. We don't actually know what number of those kids might have and it might not be any increased number, but there's a large section of the pool of kids that didn't make it to birth, and thus we don't even know what the full number is. That's the only point I was making was we're missing some data.
Yeah, Tommy, you're absolutely right. Because, you know, depending on a timetable of pregnancy, for example, just we analyzed, I mean, just what kind of prenatal or prenatal stages, let me say, are essential for monitoring and for checking whether a child can develop something. We know that, for example, if a child is infected within the first 9 weeks or so of pregnancy, and a probability for child to, I would say, to be born alive is actually zero, practically zero. And but then later stages, because what kind of organs are being formed initially during the pregnancy? Is the nervous system, so-called from initial nerve tubes from the embryo. What is being developed first is our nervous system. For example, the kind of stage of nerve tube, then the stage of so-called 3 bubble stage, 5 bubble stage. But it's maybe from this point it's not so important. But what's important to say, because while let me say, a child is being developing just from the embryo, let me say, to a fetus early stages, the child, he or she herself, has no immune system yet, and this developing embryo and the fetus is protected by the mom's.
Yeah, they get their mom's antigens.
But if the mom is having already some inflammation, what kind of protection you should expect? This is the case. Because when a child is developing under constant pressure of inflammation and infection, there is no way for us to have a healthy child. This is the problem.
Was it World War I or the 1920s? When was penicillin first introduced in mass? Was it the 20s or the teens?
It was Dr. Fleming discovered it after World War One. He discovered in 1928, and it was introduced already as a medication in the United States Army, in the British Army in the early 40s.
It was just kind of going, I know, just going back to earlier in the conversation, talking about different kind of huge changes in our environment. Again, not being alcohol and tobacco, but other things, contraception, the widespread use of psychedelics like LSD, kind of the free love movement of the 60s and 70s. Another thing I was thinking is penicillin. In terms of all of human history, that's relatively new, right? That's the last 100 years, if even. And the only reason that popped into my mind is because you said that the first kind of autism symptoms weren't discovered until the 40s. We don't really have any data prior to that.
You know, it's interesting from this point. You know, this type of discussion, Tommy, could continue for months and months and months.
Yeah, it's fun.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, just because we're staying a little bit aside from autism at this point. Antibiotics. You know, just we cannot blame antibiotics for having any kind of negative effect for simple reason.
Yeah.
Antibiotics, if before discovery of antibiotics, what was the kind of fate of regular family? To give birth to 4, 5, 7 children in order to have 1, 2, or 3 survive.
Yeah. Yeah, that was normal.
Because the mortality rate was very high.
Yeah.
Since they discovered antibiotics, let me say this, I mean, a pattern has changed dramatically. A probability of having some child who would die in the early childhood
Is yeah.
very rare. One more thing, I mean, that's if even in our field, for example, when we consider a child, I would say, incapable of surviving, somebody who was lower than 1 kilo or 2 pounds of weight would be considered, okay, it's not a child and wouldn't be able to survive. Nowadays, we can save lives, for example, for babies who are lighter than 2 pounds. Let me say it's a long work. But when we talk about antibiotics, autism saves so many lives. I mean, this created completely different perspective. But what happens, in my opinion, kind of at some point, there was a talk about overuse of antibiotics, and people claim that using antibiotics would result in some damaging situation to people who take them.
And superbugs, like
Yeah,
most.
and superbugs. But what's interesting from that, because being in this field, I would say, to me, what I'm going to say at this point, and maybe it was a first talk, I mean, and you'd be the one who would explain this, I would say, seemingly crazy concept, but actually would eventually become, let me say, kind of well accepted by everybody, by every physician. You know what? Because as soon as you go to a doctor, somebody would say, okay, you cannot use antibiotics for more than 5 days, for more than 5 days, or more than 7 days, depending. But nobody would like to say that currently there are so many antibiotic treatment regimens who would require months and months of usage of antibiotics for life saving. There are some treatments which would require lifelong treatments for antibiotics. And you know why? I mean, somebody would say, oh, okay, this is a way to create antibiotic resistance. Unfortunately, it's a vice versa. If you use short-term applications, you create antibiotic resistance.
Okay.
You know this logic. Just
Yeah.
If you use, let me put it this way. For example, let's imagine 2 fighters. One of the fighters, for example, is fighting and trying to kill some other fighter, but is not able to kill completely and make this fighter sick. The second one. What's happening? The fighter survives, let me say, and now develops some resistance to such a fight. Okay, this is exactly what's happening to microbes who have not been killed completely, because we are wounding this virus. We are creating conditions because why they developing resistance. Resistance is developing not because, let me say, you are using long-term treatments. You develop resistance if you're unable to completely eliminate the pathogen from the place of infection. Okay, and as soon as you, for example, have the microbe, which is still alive, okay, we consider weakened, let me say, but it's still alive. And let me say, the more we use short-term treatments, the more resistant this pathogen is developing. Because microbes, they produce mutations very fast. And just if you don't use, let me say, appropriate, long-term treatment or combination of 2 different antibiotics, because the mechanism of action,
the percentage of success goes up.
You shouldn't expect, let me say, full survival.
Yeah.
And what happened? And because we as humans, because nature, why many we think that this earth is the place for humans. Okay, no, it's not true. The earth is a place for microbes.
Oh yeah, no, they.
Yeah, we are a kind of their hosts, let me say.
Oh yeah, no, they're the numerical superiority.
Yeah, and
This is their planet.
without microbes, we would never be so. I mean,
Yeah,
would never appear, because they fight us. They help us developing some new things to protect us and getting more and more sophisticated. But we shouldn't forget, for example, for us to get sophistication, let me say, in our health. For example, it's not for single person. Maybe something we develop it would be applicable for another generation. Okay, but in microbes, it's completely different thing. But we said first generation, which actually, survives or multiplies in 30 minutes in an hour, for example, can create 2-3 generations which are already resistant.
yeah, yeah,
Within an hour, we
yeah,
have some microbes which already have some resistance.
yeah.
And the resistance, actually, if we don't kill it completely, let me say what we do, we create resistant microbes. And there is one, I have no idea whether we have something like this in English, but this type of saying, something which
Doesn't kill you, makes you
doesn't
stronger.
kill us,
Makes you
makes us
stronger.
stronger.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, no, it applies
this is
to.
exactly what we need to apply for microbes.
Yeah,
This is exactly the term that we say for microbial resistance.
yeah.
If you want to defeat a microbe, you need to kill it.
You need to kill 100% of it across the
Yeah,
board. Otherwise, you're producing.
correct.
Yeah,
And because of this, microbes develop in our bodies. Microbes develop a principle. We call them biofilms. Biofilms, let me say, is a specific society. Let's call it this term: society of microbes, which are attaching, let me say, to different places in our bodies. Microbes are getting attached in our bronchi, in our lungs. They can create biofilms in our gastrointestinal tract. They love our pancreas, the head of the pancreas. They love so many different places like our nostrils, let me say our ears, let me say our mouth, and so on and so forth. We are full of biofilms. The plaques we see, let me say, on our teeth, they are biofilms. Biofilms which are making them. And it's what's happening in this case. What is the difference between biofilms and regular microbes? I would say we term them so-called biofilm microbes, planktonic microbes. Planktonic, which are moving through our, I would say, fluids, body fluids. And planktonic, biofilms, they attach, they create colonies, many different colonies, and cover themselves by specific polysaccharide protein films. Why? Because these microbes, they are not reachable by antibiotics. They are 1,000 times stronger
okay.
in terms of protection compared to these microbes, let me say, in planktonic state. This is the case. When you look about antibiotic resistance, in many cases, it's not genetic change, saying, okay, the microbe developing some protection from antibiotics. No, the microbe developed protection not because of changes in the genome to be stronger. It developed protection by creating these polymer films, and in order to let antibiotics get into the biofilm. This is the case.
So they're not genetically stronger. They're just.
No,
It's
no.
almost like a giant. It's like a giant cell wall. They're just. They're just building a shield.
Some of them are. Some, for example, this staphylococcal even we still don't know whether, let me say, it's true. Staphylococcal, Staphylococcus aureus, antibiotic resistant, and methicillin resistant. But just people exaggerate the situation because I treated, antibiotic resistant staphylococcus using just 2 antibiotics, longer term, using some compound, supplement compound, which is able, let me say, to dissolve a biofilm. You get rid of this problem, let me say, very fast. It's one of the problems for autism we'll discuss later on. Okay. And Tommy, is it okay if we have we stop at this point?
Sure.
We'll have we can do this sometime this week because in 10 minutes I'm having some patients.
Yeah. No, and I know, and we still got some more questions to get through, which we didn't get through. So
Yeah, because as you suggested, we can have, let me say, several in a row.
Yeah, we got no rush. We can do a million. It's yeah, I know we went a little bit down the rabbit hole, but that's what's fun about brainstorming is throwing ideas out and seeing which ones stick. So yeah, well, we will resume because we mostly me. I diverted this podcast down into Agent Orange and STDs and LSD and penicillin and what, but Dr. Alibek is patient enough to sit here and walk this through with me. Dr. Alibek, I'll send you an email with this episode. We'll schedule the next one, and we'll try to stay on topic at least for a little bit for the next one. And yeah, as always, thank you for your time. You have a beautifully inquisitive mind that I always enjoy. I always enjoy playing with.
Thank you very much, Tommy. But I'm enjoying talking to you. It's just for what reason? Looks like we are able to discuss not just specific narrow area, because autism, as many other problems, would require, let me say, just a kind of short trips or long trips, let me say, to some other areas, and just to create a kind of full picture.
Mm-hmm.
This is, in my opinion, at some point, of course, we'll definitely come to the point of treatment.
Sure.
What's happening to children. We'll definitely discuss parents' feedback, of course, hundreds of them already in writing, and some parents who are interested in talking. Some parents are interested in just many of them are interested in coming to the United States and okay, we're ready to be next to you just to get treatment.
Yeah. Well, I think that's also a necessary component of the scientific method, though, is you kind of have to remove all opinions and you have to remove any sort of idea of what the end picture looks like, and you just kind of have to throw it at the wall and go, what is it? It's the rate of autism is increasing, and what else has happened in the last 100 years? Go. And you have to take everything into consideration, and then you start kind of chip away at it, process of elimination, and then it starts to make sense. But you have to open your mind first to be able to throw everything at the wall and go, is it birth control or was it cell phones? I mean, you don't know. You can't go in with any preconceived notion of what the answers are going to be, because otherwise you're only going to be looking for that answer. So
Tommy, thank you very much.
yes, sir.
This is what I'd like, maybe the last
Sure
thing I'd like to tell. If any of your listeners, physicians working in the field of autism and some other fields would be interested in having a dispute, a discussion, because I would love to have a good fight.
Yeah, sure. If anybody's listening, comment
okay.
or email me, tommyspodcast@gmail.com. Come on here. We'll have a civil discussion, and yeah, why not?
Okay, great.
All right.
Because in my opinion, a kind of change of opinion, clashes of opinion, maybe would finally change something in the field.
Well, that's literally what viruses do, right? It's
right.
That doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. If you want your thesis to be stronger, try to kill it first, and it'll make it a lot sharper. So,
and this is a good saying. If something doesn't kill you, it makes it stronger. But So there was a Russian joke. I mean, just Ukrainian joke. It was sound this way: if something doesn't kill you, it makes you handicapped.
Something doesn't get. Yeah, you can see the difference between that American optimism. It makes you stronger.
Yeah.
Soviet Union's like, you might not kill you, but it's still gonna mess you up.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't kill you, it's gonna make you handicapped. That's brilliant.
Okay.
Dr. Alibek, thank you so much, sir. I will email you after this. We will set up another episode, and I look forward to talking with you.
Great. We can do even this week sometime, Friday, but it will be up to you.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I'll get back to you. All right,
Okay.
Dr. Alibek. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.